Today, going back a bunch of years, was a breakthrough history, and it's a record for the most people ever that flew, the most passengers ever that flew on the 747 jumbo jet. I think 1,142 passengers flew one day on the jumbo jet. And that was why was that relevant? Because that was when Eretz Yisrael evacuated the Ethiopians right before the fall of a government. And they got out like 42,000 people in a very short period of time. So they jam-packed an LL 747 jumbo jet with over 1,100 people. That was like a record to get so many people into an airplane without to get everybody out. Now they were Ethiopians. If they would have been from Borough Park, they wouldn't have fit so many people. But Ethiopians, they were starving there, so they were able to fit 1,000 of them. My condolences are with you. What were you doing there? Okay, I only know one person who was in Ethiopia because they couldn't get a direct flight back from Eretz Yisrael, so they ended up having to.
Wouldn't be a problem much because he's too skinny. They couldn't eat him.
Dr. Gemara. Shavuos Hapikodon Ketzah. I'm on Lamed Chesem Aleph. Oh, I apologize. We didn't. Last night. Last night we didn't have a hard stop, so we actually went over there. So we are up to
Itmar.
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's in the middle of it's right.
Middle of the wide lines?
Starting the beginning of the wide lines. First wide line.
Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Vo. Lema Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lofer. So we had a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan, who said that if you're kofer on karkais, you're potter from a shvua, and Rabbi Lozer, who held if you're kofer on karkais, you're chayiv a shvua. Right? That was the machlokes. Itmar mashbia idekag. Following Pligi Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Yochanan said potter, and Rabbi Lozer said chayiv. How did we know that it was Rabbi Yochanan who said potter? Because Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said that shtaris, your potter, because ein mavian carbon al kfir shibud karkais, and shtaris represents a shibud karka. Okay, so Zok Gemara, let's suggest that the machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lozer, which is only about whether or not you bring an osham gzelos in the event that you swore falsely by a chiyuv that was on karka, like with a shtar. Let's say that's totally in a different machlokes, a machlokes tanoim, about a similar topic. If one steals a friend, a soda from a friend, the shot for nohar, and the Goslin had bad mazel, the property that he stole got flooded with water. Now he owns a swimming pool, but he doesn't own a fertile field. So now, if I steal a bicycle and the bicycle breaks, I have to go and buy a brand new bicycle and give it to the nignav. Well, would the same thing apply to a property? So the Rebbe Eliezer holds chayiv l'hamid lo yisada. The Rebbe Eliezer, it's no different than a bicycle or a car or any other metaltlin that you would buy if it would become destroyed. You have a chiyuv to refund or to give back to the nigzal what you stole from him. But the Chachamim, you can't steal karka. If you can't steal karka, it's your field that got damaged with water, not my field because it was never mine. Unlike metaltlin, where the ganiv or the gazan will be koined. V'amrinon, and the Gemara wanted to know what is the reasoning behind this machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Chum, which is ultimately if karka is nigzelos or not, right? The Rebbe Eliezer's karka is nigzelas, and therefore it's like anything else that you steal. If it gets damaged, you got to give back another one. The Chacham karka can't be stolen. It was never out of the rishus of the original owner, and the damage that it suffered was to the original owner. What is the machlokes as to whether or not karka is nigzelas? Zok Gemara, it all depends on how you darshan psukim, which method of the following do you use? Rebbe Eliezer darsh ribu umayute, Rabbanan darsh kloyul prati. And as we all know, when you dash ribu umayute, it's a much more inclusive pasuk. You're including many more things. And if you dash in kloyul prati, it's a much more exclusive type of pasuk. So Rabbi Eliezer, Darish, Ribuya, Mayute, let's look at the pasuk that we're talking about. And it says in the pasuk as follows. I want you to take a quick look inside the pasuk to get an understanding of what's going on. This is the parsha of Hashama Elois, Vayikra, Parshas Vayikra, Parakeh, and the pasuk lists off the avera of stealing from somebody, and this is what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lamer, Nefesh ki sechta umal mo b'Hashem v'kichesh b'misoi b'pikadon oy b'sesum misyod oy oshak es hamisoy oy mot aveda v'kichesh ba v'nish b'al shakar alachas mikol ashiyas adam lachtoy b'heina." These are the avera of stealing. What are you supposed to do if you steal? Two things happen. A, v'yikiyechtav v'ashem. If you do this avera, first thing you should do is v'heshiv es exel asher gasol oy es ha'oshek asher oshak. The first thing is give it back. The second thing is, if you swore falsely on it, then in addition to giving it back, you pay back the original, and add 1/5 out of 20% penalty, and bring a carbon asham. So that is the pasuk that we are now going to darshan. So let's have a look at the layout of the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, the kichesh b'misai. That's a very general. Any way you steal, riba. Then it gives a list, an itemized list. B'pikadon, oibis esumisyad, and there's two other things, right? So gazel, that's a miyat. Those are saying this halacha applies to a very specific subset of things that you could steal. Oy mikol asher yishava, which is again a very general statement, because of riba. So riba means riba kol. That includes everything. Anything you steal, you have a chiva v'eshiv as example. My riba kol mili. But l'maisa there is a miyut. Must come to say that at least for one item, this the halacha in this pasuk must not apply. My miyut stories. Stories is the most likely thing not to be included in this rule, and the svara is because stories is not guf and mammon. Stars have no value. They represent the value, but they have no intrinsic value. So therefore, we would say that's least similar to the other items that this pasuk is talking about, which is the chiva v'heshiv and the bringing of the carbon and the adding the chaimish. For Rabbanan Darshi klali uprati, they darshan this much more exclusively, and they darshan it as follows: the kichash b'misei klal, b'bikadon oibis esumishad oibigezel prat. You don't just take one thing out. Rather, in order for us to say that it's included in this rule, it has to fit the description of the pratim. What's unique about the pratim? These metaltalin, ma prat mefurish dabar metaltal. They're all mobile, unlike karka. V'gufei mammon, they have intrinsic value. They don't just represent money like a star. Afkol dabar metaltal v'gufei mammon. This parsha applies to. Yotzu karkois, this would exclude karkois. Shein metaltal. Yotzu avodim, shehukshu lekarkois. And yotzu starois, she'af al pisha metaltalin, ein gufan mama. So man the mechayev, if you hold like Rabbi Lozar in the earlier machloikis, when we're talking about whether or not, if you swear falsely about a theft, you have to give a keren v'chaimish and an osham. He holds like Rabbi Eliezer, who holds ribuy mid ribuy, that includes everything in the parsha of Asham Gzeilos, except for stories. Uman the potter, but if you hold that it's potter, Kirabanan. So Rabbi Yochanan would hold it to Rabbanan, who hold that this whole parsha applies exclusively to metaltal. Amar loy. So he answered not necessarily. Maybe we could say man the mechayiv Rabbi Eliezer. We have to be working according to Rabbi Eliezer. Because, of course, according to the Chachamim, Karkois, Avodim, and Shtarish are out of the question. So clearly, if you hold your Chayiv, a carbon Shavuah, Nashama Ilais, when you swear falsely, you have no choice. You have to hold like Rabbi Eliezer. But Uman the Potter, even Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that you don't make a you don't bring an Nashama Ilais if you swear falsely, he might also agree with Rabbi Eliezer. Amalach, he might say, as far as the Chiv Veheshiv is Gzela Asher Gozal, I learn like Rabbi Eliezer. It includes everything except for stories. But as far as bringing the asham and paying the extra chaimish, if I made a shvua, that is even a smaller subset of those that Gzela apply to. Moidi, no I Rachman Amar Mikoil Veloy Hakoil. So let's again look at the pasuk. The pasuk first talks about the Heshiv as Gzela Shagozal, but when the Torah then introduces that if you swear falsely about this Gzela, you have an additional penalty of a chaimish, and you also have to bring a carbon, the Torah further limits the subset to something much smaller. So the first rule applies to anything that fits into this klal prat to klal, or in this case, Rebbe Eliezer ribu mit ribu, the kichish b'misa, and that rule only applies to the Heshiv Gzela applies to that. But then when you want to go further and be mechayvim a carbon for a shvua, that only applies to oy mikoil asher yishavel of sheker. That has the extra rule. Oy mikoil doesn't say oy bakoil asher yishavel. Mikoil from the above list. Some items from the above list will also include the extra penalty if there's a shvua, and that would be paying the chaimish and bringing the asham. So Zokt Rabbi Yochanan, I could agree with Rabbi Eliezer that yesh gzelo lekarkais, and in fact, if you steal karka and it gets damaged, you have to give a new karka to the owner. However, I hold that's only legabi the chiyuv of a heshiv, but the chiyuv to bring a nasham ilos is even more discriminating, and it doesn't apply to all things that are nigzal. It only applies to a subset of those, which does not include karka. Beautiful. Zog to Gemara. Avilu Rabbi Eliezer Moide the Rachman Amar Mikoy V'Lo Yakol, which is Rabbi Yochanan Shita. Amar Pam B'Mshnei the Rabbi Masnis Nami Deika. Our Mishnah seems to hold like Rabbi Yochanan that there's no chiyuv carbon shvua by karkais. Why? What does it say in the Mishnah? The Ketani Ganafta is Shairi. That's a typical example of a case of mammon where there's a chiyuv of an asham gzelos. Why didn't the Mishnah pick a different case? Because look at the next couple of cases in the Mishnah. You know what the next couple of cases in the Mishnah are? Your ox killed. I'm sorry. You stole my eved, or my eved claims that I knocked out his tooth. So why wasn't the case of mammonis also a case where you stole my eved? Why wasn't that the example? Why did the Mishnah give the example that you stole my behemoth? So why wouldn't it say that? It must be my timer lav mishum de evet ishkish lekarkois ve'im mevin carbon al kfiras shibud karkois. Maybe that's a hidden message that the Tana, by selecting the case to give us an example of where you're chayiv, to pick a case where you stole, where I'm accusing you of stealing my behemoth, rather than the case where I'm accusing you of stealing my eved, is to tell us that if I accuse you of stealing my eved, since it's hukash lekarkois, there would be no asham ilos. You might have that raya, but I could make a diak in the opposite direction from the seif of the Mishnah. Zaklal. After the Mishnah went through an exhaustive list of every possible example of knas that would be included in this halacha, the Mishnah gives us a zaklal. What in the world could the Tana be adding after such an exhaustive list? It must be zaklala suye mai lavla suye genafta zavdi. So in the zaklal, the Tana is telling us that even if you accuse somebody of stealing your eved, neither does it. Even there would be a chiyuv of an asham gzelois, which actually is not like Rabbi Yochanan. So Zok Gemara, you're right. We have an issue here. We have contradictory diukim. Obviously, you can't make these diukim because you're going to find them to be contradictory. So we ignore it. So our Mishnah is neither a right to Rabbi Yochanan nor a right against Rabbi. But we do see that there's a separation of layers. Not everybody who is included in the din of gzela, like the Heshiv Gzela Shagazal, is included in Asham Gzelos. It's possible that you can hold kak and gzelas, but nevertheless you can't swear on it, because the subset of those that there's a chiyuv asham gzelos for is smaller than the set of items that you could steal. Zokt Gemara weiter. Shavuos habikadon ketzad. Tainli pikadon sheyesh li biyotcha. Now we only have the Rashi Prokim. In order to get an understanding of the Gemara, we really need to see what the Mishnah says in its extended version. So I'm going to go back to the Mishnah on Lamed Vav Amud Beis, and we are going to see what it says. So someone said, "Hayu chamisha toivim ma'isai, amulai tein lanu pikadon sheish lanu biyatcha, shvuah she'ein lechem biyadi ein chayiv ela achas." That's one general shvuah. But what if I said shvuah she'ein lech biyadi, v'loy lach, that constitutes individual shvuahs, and therefore chayiv al kol achas v'achas. Rabbi Lazar Aimer, achi yomer shvuah b'achroina. If you don't mention the word shvuah after all of the v'loy lachs, then we don't consider them individual shvuahs. And you have to literally reiterate a special shvuah for each one. So we're going to focus on the first two shittas. On the first shitta, if you just said shvuah she'ein lech biyadi, then it's one big shvuah. But if you say v'loy lach, that would be a prat, that would create individual shvuahs. Zok the Gemara on that. Tanu Rabban, klal einei chayiv al achas. If you made a klal, meaning I don't owe anything at all, any of the above, that would be one shvuah. But prat, if you said v'loy lach, you itemized, then chayiv al kol achas v'achas, divei Rab Meir. That is the shita of Rab Meir. However, Rabbi Yehuda says, shvuah loy lach, v'loy lach, chayiv al kol achas v'achas. He holds, if you say loy lach, v'loy lach, chayiv al kol achas v'achas. Now, right away, there's something that we don't understand. Because didn't Rab Meir just say that prat chayiv al kol achas v'achas? And now, isn't prat v'loy lach? That's what prat is. So we need to know what is the difference between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Meir said prat is chayav al kol achas v'achas, and Rabbi Yehuda said the same thing. He just expressed what we're talking about. What is the exact wording? Shvuah loy lach chayav al kol achas v'achas. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute. That's going to be the focus of the Gemara today. What is the machlokes between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? But let's go on. Rabbi Eliezer has another shita. Rabbi Eliezer Omer loy lach shvuah, then chayav al kol achas v'achas, just like our Mishnah. He holds, in order for the shvuah to be split into individual shvuahs, there has to be a lashon shvuah at the beginning of the list and a lashon shvuah at the end of the list. And Rabbi Shimon Omer, no such thing. It has to be a completely new shvuah per person. Shimon Omer achi yomer shvuah lachol achas v'achas. So let's go back now to analyze Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So there's a machlokes, how to understand the machlokes between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So Zaktim Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel is telling us Klalish Rab Meir is Pratish Rab Yehuda, and Klalish Rab Yehuda is Pratish Rab Meir. So, what is the prat of Rabbi Yehuda? Shvuah loy lach, v'loy lach. Zok Shmuel, Rab Meir holds, if you said v'loy lach, that combines them all into one shvuah, and it's not individual shvuahs. So, what is a prat according to Rab Meir? That if you said shvuah loy lach, without the vav connecting them. So if you say shvuah loy lach, then you're making three separate shvuahs. But if you say shvuah loy lach, that means I'm combining it all into one shvuah. That's how Rabbi Meir would learn. Rabbi Yehuda is exactly the opposite. He holds viloy lach, that's separating it into multiple shvuahs. But Rabbi Meir, if you said loy lach, that's all one big shvuah. So let's see again the words of Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel. Klal Rabbi Meir is pratish Rabbi Yehuda. The loy lach without the vav, the viloy lach with the vav, which according to Rabbi Meir would be one big shvuah, is pratish Rabbi Yehuda. As Rabbi Yehuda says beferish, viloy lach separates the shvuahs into multiples, and klal Rabbi Yehuda, a case of loy lach without the vav, which Rabbi Yehuda considers one big shvuah, is pratish Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir considers that multiple shvuahs. That is how Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel understood the machlokes in the brisa that we just read between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, no such thing. Rather, hakoil moedim b'veloy loch shehu prat. Rabbi Meir holds sai loy loch without the vav are individual shvuahs, and viloy loch is also individual shvuahs. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and Yehuda says, I disagree with you, Rabbi Meir, that loy loch are separate shvuahs, but I will agree with you by viloy loch that it's separate shvuahs. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar hakoil moedim b'veloy loch shehu prat. Sai Reb Meir and Sai Rabbi Yehuda agree to what Rabbi Yehuda said, that if you said Vilayloch, it separates the Shavuos. Loi Nechleku, so where is the distinction between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? Ela Biloyloch, if you didn't say the Vav. So Reb Meir Omer Prat. Reb Meir holds that's also a Prat. It doesn't make a difference if you said Loyloch or Vilayloch. They're both separate Shavuos, and you will bring Karbanos for each one of those Shavuos. But Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree with you. Loyloch without the Vav does not separate the Shavuos. And therefore it's a klal. Okay? But Vilayloch, Rabbi Yehuda would agree is a Prat. So Veizeu Klolel Reb Meir. What's the case according to Reb Meir? What's the case according to Reb Meir? Where it's a klal, where it's one shvuah, that shvuah she'ein lachem biyadi, right? If you said shvuah she'ein lachem biyadi, that's a general shvuah. But whether or not you said loylach with a vav, or vilaylach with a vav, or loylach without a vav, either way, that's a prat. It's only one general shvuah if you don't specify any lach. It just, I don't owe any of you anything. So there's a disagreement here between Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. What is Reb Meir saying, right? According to Shmuel, Reb Meir is saying that loylach is a prat, viloylach is not a prat. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, Reb Meir is saying sai loylach and sai viloylach are both prat. So Zok to Gemara, the machlokes is very simple. Which text do we give more credence to? Shmuel daik mi brisa. Shmuel is being medayik from our brisa. Rabbi Yochanan daik mi mesnisin. And Rabbi Yochanan was being medayik from our Mishnah. So Shmuel daik mi brisa. We're here, we just read the brisa. Shmuel is medayik for the brisa. What does the brisa say? Midakama Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was responding to Rabbi Meir's statement. And what did Rabbi Yehuda respond? He said, Viloylach is a prata. Midakama Rabbi Yehuda, Viloylach prata, have a mechlal, it must be. The Shammai Rabbi Meir, he was responding to Rabbi Meir. What did Rabbi Meir say that he was responding to? The Shammai Rabbi Meir, Domer Klolahavi. He must have heard Rabbi Meir say that Viloylach is not a prat, it's a klal, it's one big shvuah. And Rabbi Yehuda wanted to express his dissension. Well, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, I disagree with you, prat to have it. The Viloylach that you said is a klal, I say is a prat. And that's how you see that Rabbi Meir holds Viloylach is a klal. But Rabbi Yochanan, Amar, you don't have a raya from the brisa. Why don't you have a raya from the brisa? Because Tarveil Rabbi Meir pratah. Maybe what happened here was Rabbi Meir said that Sai Loylach and Sai Viloylach separates the Shavuos. And what's Rabbi Yehuda responding? Rabbi Yehuda, Biviloylach Moidinalach. I agree that if you say Viloylach, that will be a prat. But Loylach without the vav, Paligna Allah will argue. Shmuel tells Rabbi Yochanan, if that's in case, the fact, if that's true, that Rabbi Yochanan is disagreeing by Loylach, but agreeing by Veloylach, when Rabbi Yehuda responds to Rabbi Meir, why would he respond to Rabbi Meir by repeating the part that he agrees with Rabbi Meir? It makes sense for him to respond to Rabbi Meir by protesting the part that he disagrees. So Shmuel, Ada Oidile Yeduye, why would Rabbi Yehuda say that Veloylach is a prat? That's what Rabbi Meir said. He should say where he differs from Rabbi Meir. Lifloy Galeya Fluge. What he should have done was say Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Loylach is a klal, because that's where he is in disagreement with Rabbi Meir. Right? The norm is that if you're commenting on somebody, you're not going to comment about what you agree with him. You're going to point out where you disagree. Okay, so that is the shita of Shmuel, that they literally take opposite positions. What's considered a prat to Rabbi Yehuda is a klal to Rabbi Meir, and what's considered a prat to Rabbi Meir is a klal to Rabbi Yehuda, right? But Rabbi Yochanan didn't look so closely at the brisa. He felt we should be medayik from our Mishnah. Daik mi misnisa. What were the cases? Rabbi Meir gave two cases. One case was shvuah that I don't owe you anything, and that was given as the example of the klal, where you only bring one carbon. And then there was shvuah that was given as the example of a shvuah that separated into multiple shvuahs. So let's look at that. Shvuah she'enachem b'yodei is a klala. Mechalal, that any type of separation, sai viloylach, and sai loylach is a prat. Mechal de viloylach prat. Hava. It's mashma that the only thing that's a klal is if you really say all one big shvuah. But if you separate it anyway, no matter how you separated it, say there's a loyloch, there's a viloyloch, it will be a prat. The sol kedaitach veloyloch klolahave. If you're going to learn that the mayor holds veloyloch is a klal, why was the example that the Mishnah gave of a klal something that's so obviously a klal? If the Mishnah is trying to give an example of a klal, why did the Mishnah just say Shavuos she'ein lachem biyodi? It's posh that's a klal. It's one big shvuah. The Mishnah should have said a greater chiddush. Nashmin and shvuah loy loch v'loy loch v'loy loch. And kol shekein Shavuos she'ein lachem biyodi. If Reb Meir holds that even if you say v'loy loch, v'loy loch, v'loy loch, that's also one big shvuah, wouldn't it have made sense for Reb Meir to tell us that? That's a much bigger chiddush, that it's considered one big shvuah. So therefore, from that, Rabbi Yochanan proved that it must be that Reb Meir agrees that Sai loylach, loylach, loylach separates the Shavuos, and Villalach, Villalach also separates the Shavuos. Shmuel Omar, Shmuel said you can't bring a raya from our Mishnah, because in my opinion they're one and the same. Kol Omer Villalach is Kol Omer Shvuah she'ein lachem biyadi tami. It's really the same thing. So it's not incumbent on Reb Meir to specify Villalach is a klal, because that's really what it is. It's as if I made one big shvuah. So now that we have clarified the machlokes in how to understand Reb Meir, and we have clarified it according to Shmuel, who holds that a shvuah of Viloy Loch is a klal, or according to Rabbi Yochanan, that Viloy Loch is a prat. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha. Look at our Mishnah. What are the words of our Mishnah? Tanan, Loy Loch, Viloy Loch, Viloy Loch. What is the example of a prat according to Reb Meir in our Mishnah? The words of the Mishnah, you look at the Mishnah inside, it says Loy Loch, Viloy Loch, Viloy Loch. That's considered a prat. So if that's considered a prat, that's a pure raya. That's a pure raya to Rabbi Yochanan. Because according to Shmuel, Reb Meir holds by Loy Loch, Viloy Loch, Viloy Loch, it's a klal. Yet our Mishnah uses the word Viloy Loch as an example of a prat according to Reb Meir. So our Mishnah seems to be very, very clearly stating Rabbi Yochanan's position. Zok Gemara, that's very easy. We'll fix it. Just change the words in the Mishnah. Take out all those vowels. Don't say that the Mishnah's case was Viloy Loch. Say that the Mishnah was really saying Loy Loch, which, according to Shmuel, that's considered a prat. Okay, let's try the next line in the Mishnah, because there's multiple places in the Mishnah where the Mishnah's example of prat has that vav there. And according to Shmuel, when you have that vav, according to Reb Meir, it's one big Shmuel. Tashma, Tenli Pikadon, Susumas Yad with a vav, Vigezel with a vav, Ve'aveda with a vav. Once again, it's going to be Shver on Shmuel. So Akimor Tani, take the vav out, Susumas Yad, Gezel Aveda. Tashma, let's try again. The Gemara is not getting the hint. Every word we have, every case we have to take the vav out. Tashma, Telechitin, Usarin, Vikusman. Zok Gemara, I could say the same teretz there. Take the vav out. Tani Siren, Kusman. Frank the Gemara, that really makes sense. The high Tana Kol Haki Shabish, Tani V'Azal. Are you telling me that the Tana was so inaccurate that he made so many mistakes that he put the vav in each time? If he put it in 3 times, maybe you want to consider that it belongs there. And you should have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan that Reb Meir holds that whether it has the vav or not, it would be considered an individual shvuah. So therefore, the Gemara says you're right. This can't be going according to Reb Meir, because the way Shmuel understands Reb Meir, the viloi would make it into one big shvuah. So therefore, let's say Allahamani Rebbe. Maybe our Mishnah is not going according to Reb Meir. Maybe it's going according to Rebbe, who has a different shita, and he holds we always look at everything like they're separate. The Omar loishna kezayis v'loishna kezayis ukazayis protahab. Now this is in the case of pigel. Now we know there's chutz l'zmanoi and there's chutz l'mkoinoi by pigel, meaning while someone shechted a carbon, he had in mind to either eat the meat chutz l'zmanoi or chutz l'mkoinoi. Now, there really only a machshavas hazman chutz l'zmanoi makes it into pigel. Chutz l'mkoinoi doesn't really make it into pigel, according to the Shita. So what if someone said the following? He shechted the zevach, almanas lechel, kezayis l'mochar, kezayis b'chutz. or kazayis l'machar u kazayis b'chutz. It doesn't matter which one he said. Either way, we say that it's pratava. It's two machshavos. He first said kazayis l'machar, which was chutz l'zmanoi, which is pigul deraisa, and then he said kazayis b'chutz. Vibalt, it's separated. We don't look at it like it's one thing. We look at it like it's separate, whether or not he said kazayis, or if he said kazayis ukazayis. So that's Rebbe Shita. Rebbe Meir holds it makes a big difference if you say avav. If you say avav, it's one big memra. But Rebbe holds it doesn't matter whether you said avav or not, it includes both. So therefore, our Mishnah might be going according to Rebbe, and therefore Shmuel's position on Rebbe Meir is not shver from the Mishnah, because our Mishnah is not talking about Rebbe Meir, our Mishnah is talking about Rebbe. Tashma mididei. Okay, you keep on telling me, okay, the Mishnah is not Rebbe Meir. I'm going to find you a case where it's Rebbe Meir talking mamish, and let's see what Rebbe Meir himself says. Tashma mididei. Rebbe Meir said, this was in our Mishnah, afilu chita usa'ira v'kesemes chayiv al kol achas v'achas. So there's the Rebbe Meir himself is saying the vav separates them. So it's a klor raya, like Rabbi Yochanan and against Shmuel, that even with the vav, it separates them. Zok to Gemara, I'll have to take the vav out there as well. Tanichita sa'ira kusmis. Okay, so that we've deflected any raya against Shmuel, and that's how we remain. We have a machlokes at the end of the day, what Reb Meir's position is. Is loylach, and viloylach, are they both considered pratim, which is Rabbi Yochanan Shita, or only loylach is considered a prat, but the viloylach would be combining it all into one shvua, which was the Shita of how Shmuel understood Reb Meir. Now, as an aside, we learned in the Mishnah, afilu chita singular us'ara v'kos v'schai v'kolachas v'achas. And in the Mishnah, we didn't understand what's the difference if it's singular or if it's plural. So now the Gemara is going to clarify that. Maya afilu. What is the point of Reb Meir that even if you said chita singular? Amar Rav Acha b'Reid Ravika afilu chita bichlal chita. What would be the case if the Teveya said, you owe me chitin, right? You owe me chitin, and I swore I don't have any chita of yours, right? You would have thought that maybe I'm not lying, because you asked me for chitin, and I swore that I don't have chita. So I'm out of chitin, I don't have chita, right? Just because I'm swearing I don't have a chita of yours, maybe that means to exclude that I have chitin of yours. So maybe I'm not lying. Maybe it's not even a false shvua, because you're wanting me chitin, and I only deny chita, but I don't deny chitin. So you might say that's not even a false shvua. So you my afilu amar b'acha b'redavika afilu chita b'chal chitin usari b'chal sayrin v'kusus b'chal kusmin, meaning even if I made such a shvua, I try to be conniving and sly and swear on a yochid, that's still a contradiction to the fact that I don't owe you anything. Okay, beautiful. It's a totally side chiddush. The next line of the Mishnah: Teini pikadon u'sesumas yad gezel v'aveda sheyesh li biyotcha. And then the Mishnah goes on, and the Mishnah talks about a case of chitin usa'or. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, pruta mikula mitzarefes. He said that if you have a pruta combined from chitin to sa'arin and the kusmin, it will be mitzaref, and it'll be a violation of the shvur. But what's not clear is exactly what case in this Mishnah Rabbi Yochanan is referring to. So pligi ba Rav Acha over Ravina. There's a machlokes between Rav Acha and Ravina how to understand the words of Rabbi Yochanan. Chad Amar aprati mechayiv mechayiv akloi lo mechayiv. Now, what was the case? The case is the Teveya said, you owe me chitin, sa'arin, and kosmin, and I respond, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you chitin. I don't owe you sa'arin. I don't owe you kosmin. How many shavuos did I just make? How many shavuos did I make? 3, or did I make 4? Maybe there's 3 shavuos, one for chitin, one sa'arin, one for kosmin, and one general shavuos. I don't owe you anything. Is it 4 shavuos, or is it only 3 shavuos? So, Zog to Gemara, Chadamar aprati mechayiv akloi lo mechayiv. I only made 3 shavuos. I didn't make a 4th shavuot denying everything. The Chadamar akloli nami mechayiv. And the other Mandam holds, no, there's 4 shavuos here. So how does that impact Rabbi Yochanan's halacha? Very simple. If it's a prati mechayiv akloi lo mechayiv, if you hold that there's 3 shavuos, not 4 shavuos, That means there's an individual shvua for chitin, an individual shvua for soirin, and an individual shvua for kusman. You can't possibly say that a kazayis combined of all three would be over the shvua, because I made three separate shvuas. So I can't combine chitin with soirin because that's a separate shvua. But if you hold that there's a fourth shvua that combines them all, well then that would be the shvua that Rabbi Yochanan was referring to. So therefore, so therefore, if you swore chitin, soirin, and kusmin, it could not possibly be mitzaref. And then when Rabbi Yochanan said it is mitzaref, it's speaking in a case where he just made one shvua that I don't have anything. There, you can say that all of the meaning would be mitzaref. But if you learn that in the case where you itemize chitin, soirin, kusman, there's also a fourth shvua, including all the meaning together, well then for that shvua, you could be mitzaref a kazayis of all three of them. Frek the Gemara, the problem is, Vatani Rab Chia, Harekan Chamesh Esrei Chatois. Rab Chia said that there's 15 chatois. What was the case? I said I don't owe any chitin, so oirin the kusman, loy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch. So that's 5 times 3 is 15. So the question is, the problem is the imisa eshim happen. If there's every time I itemize 3 chitin, soirin, and kusman, there's also a fourth shvu involved for all general. So it's 4 times 5, which is 20. It's not 3 times 5, which is 15. It's 4 times 5. So v'imisa eshim havyu. If you hold that there's a fourth shvua here, which is the general shvua, well then there's 20. Zoktimar ein chanami. We hold like that, and in fact there is 20. So why did the Brisa only say 15? Because the Brisa only wants to tell us the one about the pratim. High Tana, the prati kachoshev, the kloi like kachoshev. Not because he holds there wouldn't be a chiyuv for that shvua. There would be, but that's not what I'm including in my list. The criteria to get on my list is pratim. We have another brisa that Reb Chia said. So if it says 20, that clearly must mean 4 times 5. So it must be that there's the fourth shvua, which encompasses all three of chitin, soirin, and kusman. So no, that's not even talking about the case of chitin, soirin, and kusman. That's talking about the case of chamisha toivin oisoi, v'amuloi ten lonu pikadon, sesumas yad, the gezel, ve'aveda, sheyesh lonu biyotcha. So there's pikadon, sesumas yad, gezel, and aveda. That's 4 shvuas without the general shvua times the 5 people, which is 20. So Zoktamar, Amar la'echad mahen. What if you told one of them, Shavua she'ein loch biyadi, pikadon, sesumas yad, gezel, ve'aveda. So that's 4 times 1 is 4. And then you turn to the other partners, and then you said veloy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch. So when I said veloy loch, veloy loch, veloy loch, was I also saying veloy loch for all 4? Or maybe I only meant veloy loch for the last item that I listed for Vaveda. So when I say veloy loch, after I listed off the 4 shvuas to claimant number 1, am I referring to all of the shvuas that I made to claimant number 1? Or I'm only referring to the last shvua I made to claimant number 1? I'm also making to claimant 2 through 5. Mao, am I being mechayiv of a shvua only on one of these items, on the last item, to the other 4 claimants? Or maybe akol chada v'chada mechayiv, and therefore it will be 4 times 5, which is 20. Tashma, the Tanya Reb Chia, harei kan eshem chatois. We just quoted a brisa, according to Reb Chia, that there's 20 chatois. Hey chadam, what was the case? Either parish, if the case was where I said clearly all 5 shavuos to all 4 shavuos to all 5 claimants, what's the chiddush of Reb Chia? Either parish, Reb Chia minyona atzalash minon, is all Reb Chia trying to teach us math, that if you make 4 shavuos to 5 people, that's 20 shavuos? I don't need Reb Chia to give me a math lesson. Ella lav deloy parish. It must be exactly the case that we're talking about. I made all 4 shavuos to one of the claimants, And then I said v'loy lach, v'loy lach, v'loy lach, v'loy lach. And the chiddush is that the v'loy lach doesn't just apply to the last shvuah that I made to the first claimant; it applies to all the shvuahs that I made to the first claimant. U'shmamina pratahavi. Beautiful.
You said that the way he pronounced it was Shvir Sha'aim Nishchitim Nishsa'oidem.
I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to the last case here, all at the bottom. Tainoli Pikado into Sumasyad, Gezel Vaveda, right? And then he said, we're not discussing that child by Kushman right now.
Right. But what I see from here is he didn't say again. He didn't say a klal. Only from the word Anuch B'Yudi, the first three words, that is the klal. He didn't repeat a klal.
Correct. So you're going back to the Friedrich Kashala. In the Friedrich Kashala, if you hold it's 4 shvias, you didn't speak out of 4th shvua. Fin the Terai Prutim Vetzach Alain.
The way you pronounce it, that he did say.
I'm not sure the words that I said, but okay. But the words of the Mishnah are the words of the Mishnah. I can't change that. Question is, does that automatically include for a 4th shvua? Okay, very good. Now we have the other side of Anasta Uvetisas Biti. So we had a machloikis there. If you bring a carbon, a Sham Gzelos over there, if you denied it. And the shaila was, it's a knas, right? Onius is a knas. So the Gemara said, I think the Tanakama said that you're chayiv, and Shimon said you're potter. And Shimon said you're potter because it's a knas. And the Tanakama told him, there's not only a knas, but only some mafater, there's also moment, there's also nezek of boish and begam, and that's why there would be a shua. So what is the machloikus over here? Dr. Gemara, Amar Abchia bar Abba, Amar B'Yochanan. My time with Rab Shimon. Why did Rab Shimon say that you can't bring a carbon for such a shvua? Lamaisa, there's boishes of begamir. There is buminess over here. The Tanakama is a very, very good argument. The teretz is when I'm wanting somebody in Bezdin, you're ma'anis my daughter, you're mafata my daughter. My intention isn't for the moments. My main claim to you is I'm focusing on the knas. That's what I focus on. So that's what the discussion is about. The discussion is only about the knas. Yes, there might be other liabilities here, but that's not what this discussion is about. That's not what the shvu is about, and therefore it's knas, and therefore there's no chiyuv asham gzelos for this. Amarava, mashal derab Shimon lemad havardaima. How could you compare this to a similar case? La'adam shamal lachaveiroi ten lechitin usarin v'kosmin sheyesh lebiyad. And the respondent said, Amar loy shvua she'elach biyadi chit. That's all he swore about was chitin. Vishtakach, and it turned out that he was right about the chitin. The chitin who delestle, Hitaka didn't have any chitin. But hasarin the kosman isplay. He had sarin the kosman.
Wasn't that obvious? When he said
That's right, that he only swore about the truth. But what he didn't swear about, he's not chayiv. So everyone agreed to potter. Why? The chiyishtaba chitin, because when he swore that he didn't have chitin, akushta mishtaba. That was the truth.
so why did he force him to swear on the other stuff? That should give you an answer, but
I hear, but we're just giving an example.
it's like a moed mixer.
So basically, what he's saying is we want to compare it to the case of when I'm wanting you a nastuf. If he says BT, I might have been claiming everything, but the respondent is only swearing about the knas.
Then that's that you're only a million and.
Amalei Abaye. So Abaye said, "Me dummy." That's not a good example to compare this case to, because Hasam bechitin kakaferle, bisarin v'kusman loy kakaferle. In that case, he's not denying that he owes sarin and kusman. But when you say loy onasta, I was not manish your daughter. I'm not only denying the knas, I'm also denying the mominus. So you can't compare the two cases. In the example you gave me, I'm not denying the kusman. I'm not denying the sarin. But in our case, when you say loy onasti is pitcha, I'm denying both the knas and I'm also denying the momin as well. Because you're saying it never happened. So if you want to compare it to a case, this is what you should compare it to. That was the tvia, and the respondent said, Shvua she'elach biyadi klal. I have nothing. V'ishtakach chitin hu delesle hasarim v'kusman isle. You found, in fact, that Hitaka didn't have chitin, but he had turned the kusman. Of course, he would be chayiv there because that was a false shvua. So avadid the mechayiv. So over here too, it should be chayiv. So what is the svar of Reb Shimon to say that you're potter? Why is Reb Shimon looking at this claim as if it's only a claim about knas? It's a claim about knas and about mammon. I'm going to explain to you the reason. The divrei Reb Shimon knasu teveya v'loy boishes upakam. When a person is monning, he's not monning everything. When I say on nasas biti, I'm not even looking for the mammon. I'm only looking for the knas. And the divrei chachamim af boishes upakam uteveya. According to the chacham, no. When I'm monning you on nasas biti, I want everything. What's the svar? What's the svar? Why would you say that according to Reb Shimon, I'm only asking for the knas? Why wouldn't I be asking for everything? The teretz is Amar Papa, Reb Shimon Savar, Leishavik Inish Midi the kids, but Tava Midi the like kids. If I'm taking you to Bezdin, I'm focusing on what I know I'm going to get. There is a specified amount, a prescriptive amount that you have to pay me if you're my daughter. There's a prescriptive amount that you have to pay me if you're my daughter. Boishin Pagam, I don't even know the value of that because that needs to be assessed. So when I'm calling you to Bezdin, I'm owning you about money that I'm sure you owe me, not about money that we're not even sure there has to be an assessment. So therefore, that's the focus of this conversation, and therefore that's what the Shavuos is about, and that's why we consider this whole thing knas, and there is no carbon Shavuot for it. But for Rabban Savri, lo shavik midi d'chimoide be lo mifter, v'tava midi d'chimoide be mifter. When I'm coming after you, nasas biti, I'm not focusing on the knas. I'm focusing on the moment. Because the knas, I'm not even sure I'm going to get. If you run on your moed and bezdin before Adam come, you'll be potter. So I'd rather focus, as they say in Yiddish, zichir is zichir. What I know for sure I'm going to get, that's what I'm going to go after. If I get the knas, that's a bonus. So therefore, it's really a perspective of when someone's mourning in court and someone's denying, what is their focus? What are they thinking about? And that will determine what a shavu is about, whether it's a shavu about mammon or whether it's a shavu about knas. Baruch Hashem, we finished the 5th parak of Perak Shavuos HaBegoden, and V'lineder had noch Shavuos HaBegoden, V'lineder had noch Shavuos HaBegoden, V'lineder had noch Shavuos HaBegoden. Zok the Gemara, Shavuos HaDayon. Shavuos HaDayon is the standard case of Moed B'Miktas. Yankel goes over to Beryl and says, Beryl, you owe me $1,000. Beryl says, I don't owe you 1,000, but I owe you 500. So the Torah gives you a chiyuv deraisa. You have to swear that you only owe the half, which is what the Shavuos of Moed B'Miktas. But there's rules and specifications as to when this works and how much money we're talking about. So Shavuos HaDayon, Hatayna Shtei Kesef. The minimum taina that has to be made, the minimum claim has to be for Shtei Kesef. V'hahayda b'shava pruta. And you have to be moida that you owe me a shava pruta. If I'm not demanding Shtei Kesef, I'm demanding less than Shtei Kesef, the whole parsha of moida b'miktas doesn't apply. Or if you are moida to me, you're moida, you owe me half a pruta, then you don't have to make a carbon. You don't have to make a shvuah of moed b'miktas. So there's rules as to the minimum amounts required to even trigger such a shvuah. That's number one. And if I'm moed on something that you're not even asking me for, that also would not trigger a shvuah moed b'miktas. Keter, let's give examples. Shtei kesef li biyotcha. Reuben tells Shimon, you owe me 2 kesef. Shimon responds, ein lach biyadi ela pruta. I only owe you a pruta. Potter, I'm going to be potter. Why? Because when the Mishnah says "V'haydav b'shava pruta," this case sounds exactly like a textbook case, but no, because the "Haydav b'shava pruta" has to be over and above what the shtei kesef is. So, what would be a case where it would be relevant if the claim was shtei kesef u pruta libiyot? Reuben tells Shimon, "You owe me shtei kesef plus 1 pruta." And you answered back, "Ein lach biyadi ela pruta." You only owe me. I only owe you a pruta. Then I'm going to be chayiv. Okay, kavalta. Now there's different reasons. There's different reasons for this. In the case where you mod me 2 kesef, and the response was "Ein lach biyadi ela pruta," Potter. Rashi says there's a discussion why it's Potter. The other reason why it could be potter is you asked me for kesef, and I agreed that I owed you nechayshus. I'm not being moida to a partial haidah of what you're asking. I'm being moida to something completely different. You're asking me for kesef. I tell you I owe you nechayshus. We're on 2 different conversations. That's not called moida b'miktas. Moida b'miktas means I agree that I owe you some of what you're asking. So therefore, in the second case where you said shtei kesef and a pruta, So which means you're demanding a pruta, and the moida to you on the pruta, they were sort of talking the same language. Okay. Mana libiotcha. What if the claimant says mana libiotcha and the respondent says ein lach biodi, I owe you nothing, so that's not moida mitas, potter, because that's kafir hakol. What about mana libiotcha ein lach biodi ela chamishim dinar chayiv, because that is being moida b'mitas of the same type of money. What about mana la'aba biyotcha? My father, you owe my father money. You owe my father money. And he answers, Ein lach biyadi, I don't know anything. I don't know the mana, but I owe elanun din, I owe half of that. There is potter mepneishu kabeshav aveda. What does meshav aveda mean? If I wouldn't say anything, I would be able to walk scot-free. I could have easily denied the whole thing because you don't know. You're claiming that I owe your father. You don't know for sure, so I could easily deny the whole thing and walk away from it. So therefore, if I'm kind enough to be moida that I owe you 50, you don't penalize me for being honest. I could have gotten away with it. It's similar to a case of I find a wallet with $1,000 in it, okay, and then I return the wallet, and the guy says $1,000. I had $2,000 in here. You have to swear because it's moida mitzvahs, right? I'm moida there's 1,000. There you don't swear. You know why? Because nobody will ever return Avedas anymore. If every time I return an Aveda, you're going to claim that there was more in the wallet, I won't bother. So therefore, by Meshav Aveda, there's never a Shavuos.
You just return the wallet without saying anything.
You pay for both.
No, that's halach. That's halach. But if I say I found your wallet with $1,000,
then he wouldn't be a five anything because he just gave back. He didn't. He's not.
no. What if the recipient of the wallet says thank you very much, but I'm not giving you an award. You took 1,000 cash out of there.
He didn't ask for a word. He said,
What?
"You're well done." The guy's accusing him. You still
Right. So you're saying I agree that I had $1,000 of yours that I found,
Yeah.
but not 2,000.
Right.
So maybe you should have to swear more than mitzvah.
No,
That's a
it's
case of more than
different.
mitzvah.
He's not saying anything. He just here's your wallet.
Right. Now, if you just say here's your wallet, that's like a case of halach. But what if the case was where I said I found your wallet, I have your wallet, and there's $1,000 in it before I give it to you, and then you say, what do you mean? There's $2,000 in it. I would not have to swear.
Moida mitzvahs is where I say you have something in mind, and you answer, I have only part of the job. Here, he's coming and saying, I have your wallet and $1,000. He never knew to ask me what I have.
Right. So that's called a Meshav Veda. Right. So it's a
Right.
Meshav Veda.
Right.
I would have otherwise not said anything. So we don't want to dissuade people and discourage people from giving back Avedis. If every time they do so, they're going to be attacked that they stole. Okay. So this is a similar case. Mana Lab Chabiyotcha is the same thing because
It's the same thing like
I
you
don't
pay-
admit it. You'd never know if it wasn't for me.
It's like you pay your taxes.
That's
The
right.
government doesn't know our taxes, okay?
Mana Libiyotcha. Mana Libiyotcha. Amr Loi Hein. Yeah, you're right. I owe you $100. Lamochar. So the next day the guy comes back and says, okay, you told me yesterday, you agreed yesterday you owed me money. Amr Loi Tnei, so why do you want to pay up? So he said, what do you mean pay up? I gave it to you. I paid you already. Potter. But ein loch biyodi. What if I say, what are you talking about? I don't owe you a penny. Then you'll be chayiv because you had already admitted the day before that you owe the money. Mana li biyotcha. Reuben tells him, you owe me money. Amar lahen, he agreed. But then Reuben told him, Al titneyu li ela. Don't pay me back. I won't accept it unless you pay me back with Adam, because I don't want you to say that you paid me back when you really did it. Amar loy tenayuli. Then he went and he said, "Can you please pay me?" And he says, "Nesatav loch, they're chayiv." Why? Because here there was a chayiv to pay back with Adam, and since he didn't pay back with Adam, he can't prove that he paid back. How about litra zov yesh li biyad? I have 12 ounces of gold in your hand. Ein lech biyadi ela litra kesef. No, you have 12 ounces of silver, potter, because that's again, I'm being moided to something that has nothing to do with what you're asking for. But what if I said dinar zov yesh li biyadcha? You owe me this coin, and I answered ein lech biyadi ela dinar kesef utrizes upinjes upruta chayiv, because we're all talking about coins. Shakoil min matbeya achas. When we're talking about coins, so then we look at all coins as one min. So if I say you owe me a gold coin and you say you owe me a silver coin, we're all talking about coins. What about kur tfua libiotcha? You have a bushel of my tfua. I have a half a bushel of legumes. Potter, because again, I'm being moida to something that you're not even asking me for. But what if I mund you in a very general fashion? Poor Paris libiotcha, and then you answered ein lach biadi alalesach kitniyos chayiv, because that is shakitniyos bechlal Paris. Tanu chitin v'loy b'sayrin. You owe me $100 worth of wheat, and you tell me back, no, I owe you $50 worth of barley. Potter again, because that's a different species. Rabbi Gamliel Machayev, and we're going to have to see in the Gemara the reason for that. Hatoyin lechaveiroi bekadeshem. I claim that you owe me 10 jugs of oil. V'hoideloi bekankanim. And you said I owe you 5 jars of oil. So Admoin says.
He says devoid oil of oil, no oil.
Oh, what about? Okay, I'm sorry. That's correct. My mistake. Okay. Admoin says hoil v'hoideloi miktas miminataina. Because when I'm telling you owe me kadei shemen, what I'm saying is you owe me jugs and you owe me oil. The oil happens to be in the jugs, but you owe me a kalim and you owe me oil. And now I'm being minded to you that I owe you kalim. So therefore, that's called hoil miminataina. Part of my haidah was miminataina. I'm agreed that I owe you jugs. Yishav, I have to swear. The haidah is not the same as the taina. I like Admoin's approach. Tanu Kalim v'karkois. I say you owe me Kalim and you owe me karkois. But you're only moed on Kalim. But the cover b'karkois, or the opposite, the karkois, the cover b'Kalim, potter, because you don't make a Shavuah for karkois. Hoide b'miktas hakarkois. If you're moed on miktas potter, because again you don't make a Shavuah for karkois. But b'miktas haKalim chayiv. And you'll be, once you're chayiv to swear for the kalim, you're also chayiv to pay for the karkois. Shanachasim shein al machrayis that have a chayiv shvua. Zoyginus and nechasim yeshalon achrayis l'shavalein. Al yidei gilgu, you'll be able to swear on the karkois as well. Ein nishboin al tanyas cheresh shoyde v'katan. If a cheresh shoyde v'katan is mourning you, you never have to make a shvua to them. Vein mashbin es hakatan, and you never ask a katan to swear. Avol nishboin likatan u'lehekish, but you could swear to a katan and to hekish. Okay, we better stop here.
So listen, in Addis, in Ethiopia, we have a Chabad shul there. No, I'm serious.